Right, welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Young. I'm an assistant professor at Cal State University Long Beach, and my co-presenter, Lisa.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Silliman-French, and I'm a retired professor from Texas Women's University. I'm a professor emerita, and luckily I still get to work with Amanda and other faculty in the United States. It's really fun, so I'm happy to be part of this conference.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk to you about structuring physical activity programs for preschoolers with autism. So I taught at a preschool for children with developmental delays from 18 months to 6 years I did that for 9 years back in Texas before I moved into higher ed. So give you a little perspective of what we're going to be sharing with you today.
Okay, so the overview of our presentation, we're specifically going to talk about preschool children in the area of adaptive physical education, behavior management strategies, and specifically for children with autism, preschoolers with autism. We're going to talk about some behavioral management techniques, positive ones. We're going to talk about preventative techniques and things that we can do to help manage behavior, so to increase time on task and appropriate activities and performances so that they can improve their skills, and applications of different strategies for the instructional setting.
So a little bit of background, we think it's really important to provide physical activity opportunities for children when they are young, because essentially we want them to be active adults. So to be active as an adult through their school age years, they need to have those foundational skills. So we want to start them really young and help them to be successful through a lifetime.
This slide just reinforces what Amanda just stated, is building that foundation initially is so important. And when I was in the field of adaptive physical education teaching, I generally focused, and we as a team, as APE teachers, focusing on the preschool children, because once we build that foundation, that structure, then we have success, specifically for transition, for routines, so that when they go to the general education schools, they're okay in kindergarten and first grade. So that transition is a little bit better with a strong foundation.
So when we think about our preschool age students, we want to focus on that school readiness. And there are a lot of different components to school readiness. For us specifically, we want to focus on that physical development and the health, as well as those motor skills. So as part of that kindergarten curriculum and school age curriculum, they need to have these motor skills and the physical development to help them be successful. So again, for our early childhood preschool age, we want to focus on fundamental motor skills, orientation skills, locomotor and object control skills, play skills, and water readiness. That's what's going to be age appropriate for our preschoolers. That's what we should be teaching. So what that looks like, there's a ton of different things that we should be focusing on at the preschool age. So here's just a few examples of what that might look like for our preschoolers. And diving into that a little bit more about that activity focus. So fundamental motor skills, we know common motor activities with specific observable patterns. So, moving their body, figuring out what that looks like. We want to be teaching orientation skills, so the ability to know where they are and where they want to go. Locomotor and ball skills, so moving from one place to another and manipulating and controlling objects. Play skills is huge for our little kiddos. We want them to be able to plan and sequence play activities on their own and with others. And then water readiness, helping them to be safe in a water environment.
Piaget stated it best: play is the work of childhood. And that's just a really important thing to remember when we're working with children. And I always instilled this, as well as purposeful play. Same idea. You want to play with a purpose, but children need to play at this level in a structured environment. And early childhood is the key. A lot of people focus when they're in the public schools or they're teaching on the older students, and we always forget our little kids because maybe they're not receiving physical education, but we really need to revisit that and work with our students that are in the preschool setting to help them, because that's where the change is occurring. And that's where we can make the biggest change.
And with that, we want to think about our kiddos with autism. So there's obviously a huge increase in the number of students with autism, especially in our preschools and in our special education world. So in America, we have the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, the DSM-5, and with that comes the diagnostic criteria for autism. So we want to just remember what we're looking at for our preschoolers with autism, potential deficits in social communication, across multiple contexts, restricted repetitive patterns of behavior. Symptoms should be present early on. There might be a clinically significant impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning, and are not otherwise explained by an intellectual disability. So our kiddos with autism, if they are diagnosed with autism, we should be having them on our service and providing services for them to help them in that early childhood phase be prepared to move.
So students with autism spectrum disorder may have difficulties with communication, and that's really important that we figure out techniques and ways to communicate with our students, because that would bring in, if there's a difficulty, there is going to be difficulty not only with you, with the child, and that's where you may have some behavioral problems, and it's because of that communication. So behavior management strategies can definitely help. So all behavior is communication. We need to have that open communication so that we have a nice flow between, so they understand what you're asking and you understand them, so you can connect and communicate well and be successful in your activities. So our goal is, as physical education teachers, adaptive physical education teachers, specifically for children with autism in preschools, to create an environment that is conducive to learning. We need to have high quality instruction. You have to use different types of teaching styles, not only, you just try whatever is best for learning and different types of teaching styles, and then infusing different types of behavior management techniques so that you have success for all the students in the classroom, whether they have a disability or not. So we want to make sure that everybody's successful, and you want high moving interaction, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in this presentation.
And Lisa just brought up a really good point. Every child is going to benefit from structure, from high quality instruction, from behavior management. So not only our students with autism, everyone's going to benefit from these strategies. So in our field, this is the textbook that we use by LeVay, French, and Henderson, talking about positive behavior management in physical activity settings. So this textbook really focuses on appropriate inclusion, positive behavior management, proactive strategies, and then 3 different approaches with the humanistic, behavioral, and biophysical. So we'll get into a little bit more about what that looks like, but if you want more information, this is a fantastic text to support all of this. So really quick, general guidelines for appropriate inclusion for our students with disabilities. Inclusion is very widely talked about around here. So just a few little tips to remember when we're working with kids with disabilities, especially at the preschool level. Consult directly with them. Ask them what they need, if they need help, what we can do to really help support them. Make adjustments to the activities only when necessary. So don't make accommodations or modifications if your students don't need it. Approach inclusion on an individual basis, of course. Adaptations are temporary, so if we can take those away and supplement other things along the way, that'll be really beneficial for our preschoolers. Reduce our new skills down to the smallest components. So at that preschool level, our students might not know the difference between a jump, a hop, and a skip. So we might have to really break that down for our students and task analyze it so that we know how to teach them the skills appropriately. We want to make sure equipment is available and, of course, be fair to all of our students.
Positive behavior management. How are we going to get that across? We need to set the tone for our students, preschool students. We need to be enthusiastic. You really need to get into this with them, whether you're doing stories or you're making up different activities with a story or different stations for that. You need to be really enthusiastic for them because it needs to be a purposeful playing environment. Physical activity needs to be enjoyment, and we're working on our fundamental motor skills, as stated earlier. And idiosyncratic, we need to find out methods that work for everyone in that environment. You need to make corrections. We need to redirect. You need to be so aware of what's going on with all of the students in the environment, so you're socially can pick that up and see what's going on and who needs to be redirected, who needs to get corrected, who you're going to give positive warm fuzzy twos. And then your positive rules, tell the students what to do instead of what not to do. Redirect them with positives. So try to keep it positive, and they understand they're going to get reinforced for, oh well, I must have done that right, I'm going to keep going, instead of, oh, you didn't do that correctly. You don't want to hear that. You don't want to say that.
So another thing to think about is we want to prevent inappropriate behavior. So we want to work towards that prevention. How can we structure our environment so that these behaviors, these negative behaviors, are not going to happen? And we can do that by promoting positive behaviors. So if we prevent and we have the structure and set up our environment so that it's conducive to learning, then that will really help bring down the number of undesired behaviors. If there are still behaviors, of course, then we're going to have to pull out some interventions. But what we want to do is we want to really promote positive behaviors, identify what the behavior is, be proactive with our management plan on how we're going to address it. And then we want to think about plan, teaching, and assessing. So before we teach, we need to have a plan in place. Our instruction is going to be what and how we're going to teach. And then all good educators should be evaluating their teaching. So what went well, assess our own teaching and see if something didn't go so well, how are we going to shift, make that change, and address it the next time around.
Routines. I've taught in this environment with, well, this was really Amanda's environment, but I brought our students from the university to this environment. We helped to teach a lot, but you can see in this environment that they would systematically come in and they had their routines and they had their para-educators there, teaching assistants and teachers there. So those students knew what to do when they came in there and before Amanda would start instructing. So practicing routines until they're automatic. The students know as soon as they come in, this is what they're going to do. I taught for 6 years in a self-contained, severe emotionally disturbed setting where all the students were identified as severely emotionally disturbed. And I had the same system. We sat in little tires that they colored and they got to decorate. But they knew when they came in, they had to sit right in their little tires. So that is automatic. They knew that right away before instruction started. They entered and they exited at the same time, or at the same space. I'm sorry. They came in one door, we went out the other door. We gave them choice, but with direction. I knew what we needed to do, but we gave choice, and both choices were what I wanted, what we needed for instruction, what they needed for their learning. So example is sitting on a green line. Use signals. Music is, of course, my favorite. And Amanda used a lot of music when she taught. And that's just the stop, start stuff. And students, I have never really found a student in my teaching career who didn't like music. I don't know about you, Amanda, but I never had anyone that didn't like music. I love teaching with music. Make sure you get rid of the attractive nuisance out there, those equipment that shouldn't be there. Because if I'm sitting there and I know there's a trampoline over there that nobody's using, if I was your student, I'm going to get on that trampoline. So get rid of that equipment so it's not an attractive nuisance. Instant activity. Make sure you as a teacher keep things moving along so the students don't have an opportunity to act out. They're going from one activity to another. Transition, which brings us right into transition. Mm-hmm. And always have a closure. If you're running out of time with your activity, just stop and do your closure. That's so important then to force the learning. Have the closure. It's better to have closure than force your activities.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point. We want to focus on the difference between physical activity and physical education. So we want to make sure that there is that learning component. So let's talk about what we practiced, what skills we did. That closure is really important for those preschool students to understand the verbiage, the language that we're using, and really learn in our classes.
One thing that Amanda did, and I did it too, which she really did quite well, is at her closures, she always incorporated relaxation at the end. I know that in that behavior management book, they push that a lot, and the authors of that push that a lot. And I truly believe in that turning the lights down, calm down, thinking through what they did. And then it's just so important. Take that 3 to 5 minutes and do that. It's so important.
Definitely.
Appropriate behavior sometimes needs to be taught. That's just the way life is, and we just need to teach that because we do not know what's where the child is coming from, that we don't know their background, we don't know their environment. So in your learning environment, in teaching, we have sometimes that has to be taught, and the students, we need to practice that. We as the teachers and the students, we need to practice so that learning can occur for everyone. So that's important to take into account when you work with our preschoolers, all preschoolers, as well as the preschoolers who have autism, which we're focusing on.
So another thing that has been really beneficial are social stories. So you can see here's an example of what my preschool class looked like. So I had a particular student that did not really want to do what we were doing in PE. And so we made this social story, and basically before PE, we would read this story. So this is what we're going to do at PE at Kinder Frogs. We're going to walk inside. We're going to sit on the green line. We're going to do yoga together. We're going to stand up for the warm up and listen to the music. And it goes on and on. It talks about the sequence of our class. I think what's really important about social stories is that the more we can involve pictures of our particular student in it, the more beneficial it is for those students, because they can see, oh, this is me doing the right thing. So we're setting the expectation. We're telling them what it is. We're adding words so that we can read through it. And then he'll understand these are the expectations. This is what I'm going to do when I go to PE. So if that means that we have to read that every day before we come to PE, then great. It's going to help set them up for success, really. So social stories are a great way to positively influence behavior, especially with that participation side. Another thing that we have used are picture schedules or a visual schedule. So another student had a really hard time with the sequence of what we were doing. So we put it into this little schedule. So, and this one's a little bit shorter. So green line, this is where we sit, we do yoga, we do a warm-up song, we take a turn for some practice with skills, we play with our friends during the activities. And if this particular student could do all of these things, then she would earn her reward of watching a 1-minute clip of Peppa Pig. So we had these little Velcro stickies. So if she got a thumbs up, if she did it, then we would green Velcro sticky on the right side. And then if we had all green thumbs up, then we got to earn Peppa Pig. If we did not get the green thumbs up, then we did not earn Peppa Pig. And I think that's something that's really important to remember, is that we don't want to reward our students if they didn't earn it. So make sure you hold them accountable, really. Here was another thing that we did. So we can, same thing with the green thumb marks. If Kendall did what she was supposed to do 5 times, then she would earn something of her choice at school. So think about that idiosyncratic. What does she like? Hers was particularly Peppa Pig. She also enjoyed iPad time or going down the slide outside. So helping involve that student in what does she want to earn was really helpful for my preschoolers. Here's some other samples of what you can use for these picture schedules or visuals. First, then that's another one we'll talk about next. This particular student, so he was 5 with autism, and he wanted to know what was going on. So I would do the same kind of schedule for him. Again, include him in the picture of the schedule. So that's specific to him. And I hung that in the wall in the gym. And every day when he would come in, he would look and check the schedule. All right, this is what we're going to do today. It got to a point where he understood the routine, that he didn't need to use it anymore because he knew what to expect. So part of that process is learning, teaching them the routines, and then helping them be successful in that environment. And then, of course, the pre-MAC principle. So we live and breathe the pre-MAC principle out here, especially with our preschool students. So thinking about what is a low probability behavior and then a high probability behavior. So first, we're going to have to read. And I know you don't really love reading, but first let's get some reading done, and then we can go play outside. So in PE, if that could be, first we're going to do our warm up, and then we get to play with the basketballs or whatever that looks like. When we can structure this and use these verbiage to really help support our students, because we know the things that they want to do. So first, let's do the undesirable behavior, and then we can do the desirable one. Oh, another one, reward chart. So this is another way to keep track of a task or a child, whatever we're doing. These are also really nice to be able to send home to families. So a lot of families want to know, how did their preschooler do at school today? So if we have some kind of chart, we can be keeping track of what went well, gives us really good data, and then we can send that home to our families as well.
Okay, the functions of behavior. We need to learn the why. Think about why the behavior is happening. What's going on? And that's something you really need to look into. Is it sensory? Is there too much going on in the environment? I used to work with a student in elementary, and she had autism. And if she went into the gymnasium, the instruction was over. It wasn't going to happen. So we figured that out, and we found ways she could stay in physical education on the side. We worked with her and we phased her in over half the year. We got her in there. But the reason was because of the sensory. So and that's a lot for children, the preschoolers. You have to make sure there's not too much going on in there, and they just need to learn those routines so that it's not too much for them. Are they trying to escape? Are they escaping because it's too noisy? Why are they escaping? Are they just because they don't want to follow your instruction? So you need to find out, do they want attention? What's going on, or is there something that they want? So we really need to figure that out. Once you figure that out, then you can determine how you're going to work with that student. And a great way of doing that is, number one, talk to their classroom teacher, because they're there with them more than you are, and talk to the parent and find out what they really like. So if you're going to use the PREMAC principle, if you're going to use token economy, what is it going to take for that child to learn? And maybe they're only going to be in your classroom for 5, 10, 15 minutes, but your whole goal is to get them to stay there for the 20 minutes. But it will be a waste of your time and their time if you don't figure out why. And so then you can implement your nice little behavior management strategies to help them and to be successful in your learning environment.
So when we talk about positive behavior management, we want to reinforce only the behavior that's appropriate. So is the behavior because they're trying to seek something or avoid something? A lot of times, if you want to think about how many of us are guilty of unintentionally reinforcing a behavior that we don't want to increase. So if a student is spitting their tongue out or something, it can be really easy to laugh or smile because it looks pretty adorable, but then we're actually giving them the attention. So we don't want to reinforce that negative behavior. There's a couple examples here. One, I love this way to look at it. This little comic says, "The principal suspended me. School is the only place in the world where you can get time off for bad behavior." So we want to make sure when possible, we're ignoring inappropriate behavior and reinforcing the appropriate behavior.
And catch them being good. Be aware of your environment and positive pinpointing. Find out what's going on and where you can give reinforcement aloud. I like the way you're running. I like the way you're kicking the ball. I like this cartoon. I like the way Mike and Gail stopped as soon as they heard the signal. And you just pick out people and you just give them reinforcements. And then the other students are going to be like, oh, wow, I want to hear my name. And I remember as kids, we always wanted to hear positive things. It's easy to fall in the habit of noticing only the negatives. And we're going to see two more slides that's going to show that. And you just focus on the negative. We need to get rid of that and try to bring up the positive so that the negative things that may be happening will change, and those things will change. So make a practice of 5 positive statements to 1 corrective, and say, I like the way you're, and whatever they're doing. Instead of saying, good job, Amanda. Well, she has no idea what you just, am I a good job for what? Standing here looking at the activity. Good job at doing what? What am I doing a good job at? So always follow through. That's one of my husband's pet peeves for Ron French. He always instilled that in all of us. Every student that took a class with him knows, what are we doing a good job in? So catch them being good and follow through on what are they being good at. I really like the way you're throwing. That's fantastic. Let's see you do it again. And then that's it. That's really just catch them being good. More positives. Here's the follow-up. So look at this. So who's usually getting your attention as a teacher? You're going to ignore the girl on the left because you're wondering in your head, why is this fellow here not? What's the deal? Why is he not wanting to listen to me? Why is he not following instructions? So think of a little preschooler. Now, this is an adult. you got to be really aware of what's going on because they probably have a million things going on. So and then the next one shows. So this one, who usually gets your attention and who deserves your attention? We're going to continually focus on the fellow on the right, but she really deserves our attention because she's wanting to learn. She knows the answer. She's going to keep asking the question. So really be socially aware of what's going on in your environment. These are really good little ones. I like those. This is me. Okay, reinforcement, implementation, best practices. So best practices, age appropriate. I think we all know that. We need to be really aware of that. We need to make sure whatever you do, it's age appropriate. You don't want to give someone a little cartoon, or we're working with preschoolers, so something too old for the preschooler to understand what it is. So find out what they like and make sure it's age appropriate, and that would be, and then hopefully that will change their behavior. Valuable. Is it really valuable? Is it of any value to them, or is it just like, this doesn't mean anything to me? It's got to be meaningful to them. And you as a teacher need to be patient and consistent. The desired behavior may not occur immediately, so just keep working on that, trying to make that change. Work with the teachers, try to figure out, once you get it, that behavior hopefully should change. This says non-food rewards. Now, I'm a strong believer in non-food rewards, but I'm also, there are going to be those exceptions. So there's sometimes those exceptions. It's rare. I don't know what you think, Amanda, about that. I don't know if you ever used any, but sometimes I used Kool-Aid for one kid, and I don't want to say Kool-Aid, sugar and everything, but I tell you, that was the only thing to get this student of ours to work at this center I worked at, and we phased it out to water. So we kept diluting it, and it worked just fine. But that was the only thing we could come up with this one student. But it's usually like your last resort, right? Do you think, Amanda?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then help the student understand the reason why the behavior is appropriate. Instill that. Make sure they understand this is correct and this is not, and this is what's going to happen when you do it correct. You're going to get lots of warm fuzzies when you do it correct, and everybody else is going to move along. You'll do quite well. So make sure they understand that. And you want to move from the least restricted to the most. Okay, that's really important too, to make sure you understand that concept.
Yeah, and when you're redirecting your students, think about your words. So what are you saying? Instead of telling your students to be quiet, maybe you should say, can you use a softer voice? I love this little infographic because it really kind of helps think about how you should shift your words. So instead of saying, stop crying, you can tell the students, it's okay to cry. Can you tell me what's going on? Or can I help you? It's not that hard. Maybe you think of and you say, you can do hard things. This little tweet was very interesting. It says, kids, coaches, please stop saying, I yell at you because I care. It sets up toxic understanding of what care should look and feel like. If you need to explain, be honest and say, I yell because I haven't learned to regulate my emotions, and so I struggle to communicate effectively. So be really mindful of the words that you use, especially when you're talking to those preschoolers. We often hear that if you can't manage a class, then you can't teach. So thinking about how you're going to manage, how you're going to set up your class. A lot of times PE professionals say that there's a lack of discipline and lack of control as one of the major obstacles in providing effective instruction. So we have to think about how we're going to manage our classes so that we can be successful and that our students can be successful. It's a lot. Behavior management is often one of the biggest reasons why new teachers leave, because if you can't manage, then you can't teach, and it makes it really difficult. In recent years, effectively managing behavior has become even more challenging with everything that that's going on in our world. So we have to be really mindful of that. So think about how you're going to manage. If that means that first you drink coffee, then you can teach, then that's going to be how you're going to manage your classroom.
All right, the ABCs of behavior management. This is really important. Number one is the antecedent event. What happened? Why is your little preschooler crying every time they come into your class? Why? Who knows why? Maybe they got in trouble in the class before. Maybe they got hit on the bus. Maybe they don't like riding the bus to school, and your class is the first one, and they just don't like that. Just throws that child off. So find out why that behavior is occurring. And there's a zillion stories as to what we or you probably have, as well as us, as to these behaviors. And then when you find out why, you're like, oh, his brother does this to him before, or the student next to him teases him. All these things happen. And then you have your behavior. Now you're dealing with the behavior. What is going on? What did the child do that we can work on? What's observable so we can figure out how to help this change this behavior? And then the consequence is we're trying to do positives. What actions or responses immediately follow this behavior so we can make a change in that behavior? We want to increase that time on task. We want to do it positively. We want to find out how we can do this so that they can be successful. So they're not crying, or we find out we can catch them before they're crying and before they come in, stop that crying, and maybe then we won't see these behaviors. Generally, when you find out the antecedent, that really helps out with the behavior.
Definitely. So again, we want to focus on the behavior and not the child. So a lot of times, like you might see this picture and think, man, that's a bad kid. Well, our kids aren't bad. Our students aren't bad. They might have undesirable behaviors. So we want to focus on that behavior and not the child. So that means that we should phrase our redirections carefully, describe the behavior and be specific. Think about this we attitude as working together. So, John, are you going to be lazy today? We don't really want to say that. Instead, we should say, John, what can we do to improve our participation in PE? So have these conversations with your students and really be mindful of the verbiage that you use. So to finish up our key points in managing behaviors for our preschoolers with autism, structure and routine are so needed. Be positive, redirect them. So if you see someone doing something that they're not supposed to do, invite them over. Oh, I see that you need to do something with your hands. Why don't we go practice throwing over here? Kids are being good, acknowledge their feelings. I think that's huge. Our kiddos are going to have feelings and they're going to show that. So let them show that, let them have their feelings and help them figure out what to do about it and how to move on. Definite trial and error when we're talking about behavior management. You might try 5 different things before you find one that actually works. And with that, it should be individualized. So what works for one student is maybe not going to work for another student. Collaborate. You have a wealth of knowledge with everyone that you work with. So ask for help, communicate, and then again, assess and reflect on your own teaching. What are you doing that's going well? What can you do differently to best support your students? So that's kind of it for the lecture, but we did want to take a minute and go through some activities. So I wanted to just give you some ideas of what this managing behavior looks like from a preschool perspective. So we'll go through some sensory motor organization, themes, rotations and stations, which are great, basic gross motor skill development, curriculum design, equipment, classroom management with different items. So we're just going to show some pictures so you can kind of see what that looks like. A great way to set up your class is to have a designated spot for students to come in and sit down. So these little cube chairs are really great. It gives students their individual space and they can come in and sit right down. They can also go back to that spot for transitions if they need to. Sensory, a lot of our students with autism love sensory integration. So maybe they're jumping into a ball pit or they're jumping on a trampoline, giving them that sensory input that they might need. Another thing, just some different activities for them to do. There's like a little slide over here, crawling through tunnels in and out. Again, another trampoline, which is great. Here's the other sides of the slide. We've got a basketball hoop, a little balance beam, some steps, just setting up our environment to get our students to want to move their body and experience movement in different ways. That's what's really important for our preschoolers. When we're teaching our students, make sure that their skills can be transferred into different environments. So we might be teaching them how to walk up and down stairs in a classroom. They should also be learning how to do that outside or maybe up and down a curb. So creating that environment, helping them to generalize those skills is really important for our preschoolers. Structure is huge. When you give your students obstacles, help them understand what they're supposed to do with it and then go through that. So my kiddos loved obstacle courses. And if we can show them they're supposed to go up and then down, maybe go under or over or through, just talking about exploring and moving their bodies. Themes are great. So in the winter, maybe we're going to do an ice skating theme, or we're going to decorate like some Christmas trees or some Rudolphs over here, or we're going to do a little snowman relay. So incorporating themes gives our students kind of just excitement about coming to PE and something fun for them to do. Collaboration is great. So in our PE settings at the preschool level, we're also working with our speech and language pathologists and our physical therapists. So when we can all work together, we have the same goal for our students. So we should definitely be collaborating as much as possible. Think outside the box. Here's some fun little activities my students loved. Marching or jumping on bubble wrap. So take a little square of bubble wrap to the gym. When we're working on striking, let's throw a piñata in there. How fun is that? Rhythm dancing is always fun, shadow dancing. So try to think outside the generic sport focus of what physical education sometimes is, and get really creative with your activities. Expose them to so many different things so that they're constantly learning. So we've got some dance, we've got yoga, we've got some hot spots over here. Scooters are great, talking about body awareness, some really fun things to talk about with our preschoolers. Just a few more activities. Body bowling. This was a hit for my students. They love that one. Throwing, some cause and effect games where you can throw and try to knock the mushroom or the frisbee off of the cone. Different kinds of throwing and catching games, striking, trying to give our students so many opportunities to explore different physical activities is really important at that preschool level. Use visuals. So I think people think I'm crazy to teach preschoolers cup stacking, but they absolutely loved it. They might not do it in sequence with, that other students might do, but let's give them some visuals. So I took some pictures and I'll use these as picture cards. See if you can build this or do this. Visuals are really helpful for our preschoolers to kind of understand the expectations and then try to do different things. I think by far the most important thing is to have fun. So when you're having fun, you really set the tone. Your students will have fun and they'll hopefully enjoy physical activity at a young age, and we can instill in them that desire to be physically active for a lifetime. So with that was a lot of information, but hopefully you got some ideas of what you can do with your preschoolers with autism and how to focus your classrooms and your environment and how to help manage behaviors in a positive way. So we will open it up for questions, but thank you for being here. Thank you, Lisa. And yeah.
Thank you. Just want to say one last little thing. Changing behaviors is challenging, but it actually, you can be really successful at it if you look around to see who can help you, because the child is not coming in alone. There's parents, there's teachers, and sometimes you have student teachers that can come in to help you, but it's possible. And the last thing I want to say is sometimes when you ask a child to change his behavior, don't keep asking them over and over and over. Do it twice. If it doesn't work, try a different technique. Find ways to make that behavior change so that so they're safe and successful. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time.